Hello and welcome to K-Learn TV, your Sioux Falls Classroom Connection. We thank you for joining us. I'm Deanne Conrad, Community Relations Supervisor for the school district. Dr. Brian Maher is here to talk about a very important election that's coming up. We know our community has heard about the election. We hope, at least in some part, they've heard about it. But we really want to take this time to delve deeper into the discussion and answer any questions that they may have prior to Election Day. So this is the largest school bond referendum in South Dakota history, as we understand it.
Yeah, I didn't think of it in those terms, but it certainly has a big impact on our city, and our city has a big impact on the state. So I know it's a big deal.
Yes, so we want to be able to share information for voters who are watching this program or able to access it on our website or such. This is $190 million that we would issue in bonds to help with some increasing enrollment, some safety concerns that we've had, or just safety upgrades, if you will, and also some security issues as well.
Right. Really well put. When you think of what issues do we have as a school district, number one is part of our growth, and number two, just as part of being a large organization. The growth, I think, is pretty simple to see. If you are in or around Sioux Falls, you see new rooftops all the time. And with those new rooftops come new people to our community and new kids to our school district. So the enrollment piece, I think, is easy. And that has manifested itself into a need for a high school, a middle school, and an elementary school. What sometimes maybe isn't as easy to see is the tender loving care that we provide, the facilities that we already have, to make sure that they last for years and years and years to come, and also to provide the security issues that you talk about, the ADA issues that we have from building to building in our district, and also the equity issues, to make sure that if I live in one part of town, the building that my kids go to is every bit as good as the folks across town. So there's a standard of equity that we want in our buildings as well. So all that together makes that $190 million.
Right, and there's a point of pride that we take that all of our school facilities are well kept and up to par and good learning environments for our children as well. Not anything extravagant. We've seen extravagant in other parts of the country. Yeah. Not extravagant, but modest learning environments that are good for kids and good for staff.
We have good schools. We have incredibly well-maintained schools, thanks to Jeff Kreider and a whole host of people in operational services, but also because we place a priority on keeping those facilities up to speed, up to snuff, as my dad would say.
My dad too.
And so it must have been a generational thing there.
Right.
And I'm very pleased with how we take care of the properties that we're responsible for.
Okay, so let's dig in. All of this conversation began actually several years ago upon your arrival in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, it really did. You know, it was clear when I came, which was a little over 3 years ago now, that the community was growing and that the school district was growing. What wasn't clear at that point was our need for another bond issue and more schools. So we made that part of the strategic plan to really look at our facilities, look at our growth, and really engage the community around that concept. So that's been well over 2 years where we've had that conversation generally. And then specifically, over the last 18 months, we've really ramped that conversation up and really included the public in that dialogue.
Right, so if we go back, it was the beginning of last summer when we were starting to really look at our enrollments in each building and kind of fact-finding, if you will, at that point, gathering information. And there was a lot of work that happens behind the scenes that doesn't really get headlines, if you will, but just information that we needed to collect in order to begin the process and know that this was a necessity moving forward.
Yeah. You know, one of the things we did last summer in August, and it might have been August 1st, I don't remember the exact date, but it was August work session with our board. And we outlined at that point a process that would take us right to where we are today. And I don't know that we outlined every step exactly to where we are, but it was pretty darn near. In fact, I wish my personal goals would follow that linear progression that this has followed. But in terms of doing the research, in terms of engaging the entire community, in terms of bringing a task force together, in terms of our Board of Education, really doing a heavy lift in developing the scope of the project, all the way to getting to an election day in September, that has really come to pass over the last 12, 13, 14 months. And here we are ready for a vote on September 18th.
Right. That September 18th vote didn't just happen at the snap of the fingers, as you've mentioned. We took that information that we gathered last summer, fall, and took it to the community and said, here are the facts, give us your opinion, give us your ideas, your feedback. Those community engagement sessions were well attended. Not the best weather all the time, but they were well attended, and we really did have some good input, very deep thinking on behalf of our community and stakeholders.
We had great input, and as you were talking, Deanna, I'll think of two other things that went along with that. Number one, I have a student advisory group that I meet with quarterly, and engaged them, gosh, must have been in December of 2017, or maybe earlier. Last school year, and talk to them about what this might look like. And from that meeting, we had them come to a work session of the board and talk about their perspective as we looked at our facilities. We had two meetings where any teacher in our school system could come to those meetings and have that open and honest dialogue like we had with the community. And then, as you mentioned, we had three of those meetings across the community talking about our dilemma, our delightful challenge, as we've termed it, and then potential solutions. And we've had a number of opportunities for impact from students, from staff, and certainly from the community at large.
And really that student perspective sometimes gets overlooked in a large project like this, but the students you had on your advisory team, they really brought some critical pieces and parts to the conversation. And also in discussion at that work session with our school board, I know some of those comments made by our students sort of ring in our ears constantly, like, don't change the culture of my school. I love my school. And really those are powerful words to hear from students. Yeah,
it was the student piece was, and I've been in this long enough, I should know it by now, but every time we engage the students, we learn. I certainly learned just by talking to the student advisory group. And the student advisory group, by the way, is representative of every high school in the district. So every grade level at every high school in the district. And they were so impactful. Not only did we have them go in front of the board for a work session, but we also had one of those members, Ann Madsen, who did a great job for us. Ann Madsen was part of the facilities task force that was made up of her and 29 other community members.
Right, and so that piece is critical in hearing just how they feel about their school, and also getting that information shared with students so they feel like they're part of the solution as well. You mentioned the task force. Anne was one of 30, and that group of 30 was a good cross-section of our community. We did some mapping to determine, make sure we had people represented from the east side, the west side, the central, and different age categories as well, whether you're a young person, a young professional in our community that maybe has children, doesn't have children, a parent, and then those who have seen their students through K-12 education and beyond and are now looking at the community from a different perspective. But how did that process work and play out in terms of the other experiences you've had in this arena?
Well, you nailed it. Not only did we have a student in Ann Madsen, but we had adults who didn't have children yet. We had adults who have kids in our facilities right now, and we had adults who have had their kids go through our school system, and some of them even have grandkids now in our facilities. So we had folks who about the school system, but from a broader context, care deeply about our community, because they know this isn't simply a school district issue, but it's truly a community issue. And I think the folks that we had on that task force really looked at this from a community perspective. And we brought in Mark Cotter and Mike Cooper from the city of Sioux Falls to make sure that our focus wasn't so narrow that it was just a school system focus. And they really brought a lot to the table for us from city perspective, city projections, and to make sure that to just check us on our facts and on our thinking, and their contribution to the task force was invaluable.
All of those meetings, of course, were open to the public as well. We live streamed those, and all of those live stream videos are available for viewing if people want to catch up on the process and maybe haven't had enough time to learn about and listen to the process. But all very transparent and out there, not meetings that were held in a small conference room where 6 or 8 people had say in what was going on, but that's very critical and important to you as superintendent. Deanna, this is the 4th bond issue I've been through as a superintendent. And so you kind of see over time the process and how it evolves. And I think in some of my early work on bond issues, I thought they were mine. And boy, I wanted to really control them. And what I learned was that if I would help the folks who it really mattered to, the people in the community, and let them decide what it looks like, they're going to come up with something far better than I would. And they did again. I would not have come up with the $190 million bond issue. I would not have come up with each piece as this task force has come up with. I wouldn't have done that alone. I suspect that our Board of Education wouldn't have done it alone. But when we really engaged the community, we came up with something that I think is well, doesn't matter what I think. We came up with something that I know came directly from the task force and came directly from involvement and engagement of our community. Right, and all aspects of that community, some business leaders, some, as you said, parents and young folks who are just getting their start and really placing the value on what do we want our future in the city of Sioux Falls to look like in 10 years, 25 years down the pike. And what we heard is people want good schools. That's one thing that will attract businesses here in the future. And it's a workforce development checkbox, if you will. Any company that's considering Sioux Falls, as a location will look, because they won't be able to get employees to come here or stay here if we don't have quality schools.
I think of a couple of things as you talk about that. Number one, I heard Jason Ball, our executive director of our Chamber of Commerce, speak about the bond issue on a local radio station. And one of the things he said was the Chamber has endorsed the bond issue. And the reason the Chamber endorsed the bond issue is they want to make sure that Sioux Falls continues to be attractive to companies and continues to be attractive to young families. And he gave a personal example of how his oldest, who will be a kindergartner this fall, he said, I promise you that he and his wife would not have looked at the city of Sioux Falls, had the school system in place not been something where they would have wanted their children to go. So he understands firsthand as a parent the importance of that, but he also understands as the executive director of the Chamber and as a representative of our business community how important good schools are, both public and private, and how they're critical to what we get done in the city of Sioux Falls.
Right. So back to the $190 million. The school board decided on July 23rd that they would approve that moving forward with an election on September 18th. Tuesday, it will be election day in the school districts of Sioux Falls, not necessarily the city of Sioux Falls, but the city and the school district are not necessarily the same boundaries. So we want to make sure that people who are voting are in the Sioux Falls School District.
Right. All of the Sioux Falls School District is in the city of Sioux Falls. Not all of the city of Sioux Falls is within the Sioux Falls School District. Some of our
think about that for a
some of our neighbors, I know Harrisburg, I know several others, actually have part of their school district land that is inside the city of Sioux Falls. So if you live in that area of Sioux Falls that isn't part of the Sioux Falls School District, you won't be able to vote on the Sioux Falls School District bond election. But if you live anywhere in the school district, no matter where your kids go to school, no matter if you're for or against the bond election, you have the right to vote on September 18th.
Right, and really we talked about that being the ultimate form of community engagement. We have invited people to attend our community engagement sessions, our task force meetings, provide input on a survey that we were grateful so many people took part in. And now we hope triple that number come out to vote on election day. And it really is about allowing people the opportunity to voice their own opinions based on after having the facts and the information that's been provided.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think we've been very transparent. I think we've really involved the community in getting a potential solution on the ballot. And now the ultimate form of community engagement is everybody has the opportunity to vote on this solution. Yes or no, whether you think the solution is right or wrong. Your vote is the same as my vote, and we all get one of those votes. And so get out on September 18th and exercise that right.
Right. The bond is for $190 million. That would build a high school, a middle school, an elementary school. It would make improvements at 14 buildings across the district. So I know a lot of times the new schools seem to get the headlines and the plays and that type of thing, but such things as equity, as you mentioned previously, in gym space, in music space, some of those projects, talk a little bit about the necessity for that beyond the high school, middle school, and elementary.
You know, the last bond issue we ran as a school district was in 1997. So 21 years ago, the school district ran a bond issue. And in that bond issue, one of the key pieces of that bond issue was equity and developing standards from building A to building B to building C. And that thought process, that philosophy has withstood the test of time. We want to make sure that we continue that going forward. I'll give you one example. You talk about gym space, and if we remember that a gymnasium is a classroom.
Yes.
At the elementary schools, the gymnasium at Cleveland Elementary is really substandard compared to gymnasiums of their elementary colleagues throughout the district. And so one of the things we looked at is how do we make that right? Do we build a new Cleveland Elementary? Do we repurpose the gymnasium? What do we do? And one of the things that the task force decided to do was redo the gymnasium, bring it up to standards, and let's get a good long life yet out of that building. So I think it's $5.7 million. I don't remember the exact piece for the Cleveland gym, but that's one example of how the gymnasium at Cleveland will be standardized with the gymnasium at John Harris or Discovery or any other elementary school in the city of Sioux Falls.
That's an example of that equity where no matter what zip code you live in, the students should have the same opportunities and the same classroom space as everyone else. And I happen to know the gym teacher over at Cleveland. If this happens, I know she'll be a smiling gym teacher.
Yeah, she was our teacher of the year a couple
was.
of years ago. So she's probably going to be smiling no matter
regardless,
what.
yeah, she's kind of a happy-go-lucky person anyway. But again, that equity is so critically important. We have many over at Memorial Middle School. Not only do we have a plethora of students, and more than that building was really projected for its use, but also our music areas. We have so many students involved in music there that some of our storage space and just actual space in the music room is a little tight also. And so one of those projects would be making that equitable.
You know, Memorial is, we have many schools that are overcrowded. Probably none of them are more pronounced in being overcrowded than Memorial is. And Memorial is using many spaces that were never ever programmed to be educational spaces. But in order to make it work for the population that they have, they've really become somewhat ingenious in, well, I'll just say taking spaces that were not intended to be classroom spaces and making them classroom spaces.
Right, and when you think of that, something that just popped into my mind, you're right, we get creative. In a hospital facility, though, you wouldn't have a classroom in a waiting, or you wouldn't have an operating room in a waiting room or something of that nature. So really, they're not set up for that. And we do make it work because we're fiscally responsible and we work hard to make sure that the students have the delivery of education that they need. And if the space isn't there, we press on. And now our community is saying, hey, it's time to get back to real classrooms, maybe.
Yeah, I think, certainly the community engagement sessions we had and the task forces said that, and now on September 18th, we'll see what the community at large says.
Right. So that vote happening on September 18th, we have 13 vote centers throughout the community. How will that work?
Yeah, it's just as we've done whenever we have a standalone election for school board members. It works just like those do. So we'll have 13 vote centers. You can vote at any of those vote centers, and the other piece is there are also absentee ballots that are options as well. So any of those options are available to you. We try to make it as convenient as we can for the community, ultimately to get the largest voter turnout that we can possibly get.
Absolutely. The thought behind those vote centers, located in convenient places, on your way to work, nearby your workplace, so maybe you can run there over lunch, making it quick and easy so as not to have long lines, but also be responsible in terms of not having a bunch of people sitting idly out there waiting for voters to come in either. And gosh, we hope that's not an issue.
Yeah.
We hope our vote centers are very busy on election day.
Well, there's advantages and disadvantages to the way we run elections, and the advantage to the vote centers is you can go wherever it's convenient. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go to the one space. The disadvantage is that we're creatures of habit too. So I know where I go on election day, mm-hmm. and if I go there and it's not a polling place, I might be a little perplexed. So one thing I would say to the community is make sure you know where our vote centers are, and then wherever the vote center is that is most convenient for you, go exercise your right to vote at that vote center.
Make sure you get there. So we'll be doing several things leading up to Election Day to inform voters about where they can cast their ballots. Another option is absentee voting. If you know that life is going to be hectic for you on September 18th because kids will be in school and there will be activities going on and lots of other things that you may need to do, we encourage people starting August 20th to absentee, and they can simply come down to the Instructional Planning Center and cast their ballot there. We'll have somebody on staff to help with that.
Right, and we'll make sure that's easy, that's accessible, and that's available for anybody that wants to use that option to vote.
Right. We're also looking at September 8th as a Saturday vote from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., where you can also, again, come down to the Instructional Planning Center, cast your ballot there, and have your voice heard. 201 East 38th Street is the address there. Also, just a reminder, I think it's starting to become habit, but bring along your government ID. How many times do people have to run back to the car to grab that or what have you? But if you're coming out on election day, you have to have a government issued ID so that we can verify your voting status and that you're part of the Sioux Falls School District. So what else do you want voters to know about that maybe hasn't got as many headlines as you'd like, or things along the way that they should take into consideration?
One thing maybe that gets a little misunderstood is what's the cost to me? Mm-hmm. And I think we look at the $190 million price tag, and I think it's easy to kind of lose track of what that means to me. Mm-hmm. And I look at this bond issue as though you're a consumer. And as a consumer, if I'm at any marketplace, I see something that I want, I figure out the price, and I determine, does that price worth it for me to pay for that item, whether that's a food item or a pair of shoes or whatever it is. And I think that when you look at this, you need to figure out, what am I getting and what am I paying to get that, and is it worth it? And so for a new high school, a new middle school, a new elementary school, and about $50 million worth of other upgrades to 14 different buildings in our school district, the cost to you, if you live in the median priced home, and I know I say this all the time, median isn't average, median is middle.
Right.
So half of the homes in Sioux Falls will pay less than this, half will pay more than this. But the median priced home in Sioux Falls will pay $2 a month for that new high school, new middle school, new elementary school, and $50 million worth of other upgrades. So the question you have to ask yourself as a consumer is it worth it? I think that's the big question.
So one of the things available on our website under the facilities planning tab on the website on the left-hand side of the screen is a bond calculator. So if you live in a home that's valued at $128,000, you can simply go in, place that number, whatever the value of your home is, and put it in that calculator to determine what your tax implication is going to be. And vice versa, if you live in a $600,000 home, whatever the value of your home is, simply put it in there, and it's set up to inform you about that.
That would be $6.48 a month, by the way.
He's a math guy,
Yeah.
if you didn't catch that, because I simply am not. You know that already. So yeah, all of those, we want to be very transparent, allow people to see, as you said, what the impact means for me, and am I able to work that into my life, my lifestyle, and is it worth it for the children of Sioux Falls?
Right.
Yeah. Well, all of these things are things you'll have to weigh prior to Election Day. We hope you do take the time to learn about it, research those unanswered questions that you still have. Certainly, if you have questions, you can contact us at the Sioux Falls School District. You can check out our website, sf.k12.sd.us. Click on the Facilities Planning tab and learn about a bunch of information there. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, and just really pay attention to what's going on in and around your schools, and you cast your vote whichever way you choose on Election Day. But we really do encourage everyone to get out and vote and make their voice heard. Thanks for joining us today.